Hello, I'm Joshua of Milestone Play. I'm a professional game master, and this week we have a video on inspiration in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Last week we took a look at the mechanics of inspiration, luck, and how those mechanics changed between the 2014 and 2024 versions of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. However, the main thing that stayed the same between the editions for inspiration is when Game Masters are supposed to give it out. According to the rules, Game Masters are supposed to reward their players with inspiration when they do something that follows their personality traits, their bonds, their flaws, when they do something that enhances the story that possibly isn't the most optimal. Basically, it's supposed to be operant conditioning for good roleplay. If you roleplay your character, you get this little reward. Now, in addition to that reason for giving inspiration, the game also says that Game Masters can reward inspiration for whatever they want, that they should inform their players what sorts of things could earn them inspiration. Well, in today's video, we're going to be looking at some of the methods that I have used to reward inspiration to players in the past. Some of them I still use, some of them I use occasionally, some of them I've based entire campaigns around. I actually have all of the information in this video in a document that you can download for free on my Patreon, linked in the description below. So you don't have to take notes, you don't have to timestamp. Watch the video and then just go grab a copy of this to give to your game master and say, hey, can we try out one of these methods for inspiration? But yeah, let's get going. As we get into the first method that I use to reward inspiration, I do need to call out a related method that is joked about on the internet, and that is rewarding inspiration for a good joke. Game Masters will typically give out inspiration to a character whose player has just made a joke so good that it breaks the table. Jokes are having fun at the table, and rather than rewarding inspiration for role-playing your character, you're rewarding it for having a happier environment at the table where people are enjoying themselves. Now, related to that is my thematic inspiration. I use thematic inspiration to focus a session, focus a one-shot, focus a narrative. If you want your game to be more heroic and you want your characters doing heroic things for the sake of being heroic, you can actually award inspiration for characters following that theme, even if there isn't another reason to take those actions. For me, though, I typically do this very thematically on a theme. For instance, I run a lot of Disney-inspired games, I call them my D&Disney games, where everyone plays a Disney character. I have a bunch of pre-gen characters, I invite people to make their own. The short of it is, D&Disney is just a one-shot about playing Disney characters, quipping, referencing. Disney is the theme. I reward inspiration for a very good reference, for doing something that maybe an experienced adventurer might not do, but a Disney character would. This is clearly a trap, but my character would know nothing about that. Maybe Mowgli doesn't know any better. Maybe Ariel needs to really go get that Dinglehopper because she has to add it to her collection. Even if there's a giant neon sign that says, this is a trap, you gotta get that Dinglehopper. Playing into the theme of a Disney game rewards inspirations because people want to play into the theme. And the more people do it, the more people want to do it, the more other people do it, and it's a self-feeding loop. By choosing a theme for your one-shot or your campaign, and then rewarding players with inspiration for meeting that theme, you can focus the type of story being told and focus how characters interact at the table. I typically use thematic inspiration for my one-shots. It's a very good way to make sure that everyone is staying focused, without yelling at people, without saying, hey, you really shouldn't be doing that. By establishing the tone and the theme with your rewards, you establish how players want to interact with the story. The next method I use to reward inspiration to players is called self-inspiration. The players are rewarding themselves inspiration for their own actions. Many of the long-form games that I've established, whether they are campaigns or one-shot miniseries, players tend to know each other, and they tend to check in at the beginning of the game. This is their opportunity to share the good things that have happened over the last week, as well as maybe vent off some of their frustrations. The players care about each other, and they want to know how each other's doing. Well, I took this and kind of made it mechanically beneficial to the players simply for caring about each other's lives and for caring about their own lives. Self-inspiration is when You have done something in the previous week that you are proud of, that you didn't think you were going to do, or you really didn't want to do, but you got yourself to do it anyways. And your character this next session has inspiration. Self-inspiration is a mechanical benefit for something the players are already doing themselves. Whether it's something that they managed to accomplish after a lot of work, or doing something this last week that they really didn't want to do, your player character is getting a bonus during this session because of your own actions that have bettered your life in the last week. Some players have claimed this reward for making a doctor's appointment, or trying a new vegetable, or going out to a social event when they would have really rather just stay inside by themselves in the dark on their computer, playing a video game, binging on some streaming service. Not all these things have to be heroic. They just have to be something above and beyond what you would have done otherwise this week. Something that you are proud of and you deserve credit for. And rather than getting a golden star on your report card, you get inspiration. You get something that your character, who inspires you to do great things, can now have a better chance at accomplishing. Now, self-inspiration isn't for everyone. Some people don't like sharing about their lives. Some people don't like boasting. Some people find that having this checklist that they have to hit every week of, oh, I've got to do something I'm proud of for D&D, that can actually weigh down on them. So self-inspiration isn't for every group. However, if you are someone that likes tasks, you like objectives, you like those little tracker apps where, oh, it's been X many days since I've had a cigarette, or whatever that you're doing to try to better your lives, this is just one more thing for you to get that check mark and go, yes, I did something for me, I did something to better myself, and I want to know everyone else's victories from this past week. Once again, not for everybody, but this is something that I have used for about a year in a long-standing campaign, and some of the players really enjoyed it. Some of the players, probably not so much, and it kind of got tailed off near the end of it because some players weren't really into the whole vibe of self-improvement, that sort of thing. So you want to make sure that you're using this with a group that will appreciate it, but it's a lot of fun, and it's an easy way to start every session knowing that you get inspiration. Actually, about that, if you're not used to using your inspiration, if you're used to holding it, sometimes you find that, oh guys, this is what I did last week, but I don't get inspiration because I already had it. So this does take some time for players to get used to, but if it's a good thing for your group, I encourage you, please use self-inspiration. It's a lot of fun. Our third method for rewarding inspiration also happens at the start of the session. Typically. There are ways that you could incorporate this into the middle of the session, especially after a 10-15 minute break or breaking for lunch or dinner or something before getting back to play. But anyways, this method is quest log inspiration. You can find a lot of methods online for different ways to summarize what has already happened in a campaign. Sometimes the game master might do all of it. Sometimes the game master might lead it, ask questions to the players. Sometimes the players might lead it. For me, I tend to summarize what happened in previous sessions myself. If a player could not be present for the last session, or I know a player is having a lot of chaos in their life and isn't completely focused on the game, I can make certain that all of the stuff that needs to be known is known in the order that it matters. If you have a bunch of players sharing their version of what happened last week, sometimes that's all jumbled together and someone who isn't in the know can find that a bit difficult. I will end a session recap asking the players if they have anything to add or if they have any questions about what was just talked about, but typically I make sure that I hit all the bullet points in a manner that will help players that haven't been around catch up to what's going on. Now, quest log inspiration. This is for when you are in the middle of an adventure, in the middle of a quest. You might have had a cliffhanger last session, or you might have had a long beginning of the session, a break, and now you're going into the second half of the session on this quest. Quest log inspiration is where you have the players recap this specific quest. We don't need to go into character backstory stuff. We don't need to go into what was at this shop, what little shenanigans happened last session. This is all about this quest. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? What core ideas need to be known? What hints, what clues do we have? We're just worried about this small packet of information. This allows for all the players to catch everyone else up on what they might have forgotten about this specific quest. And it also lets me know what I might need to recap about this mission. After we do all of that, after the players have all had a chance to speak, and then I clarify anything that needs to be clarified, everyone gets inspiration. Technically, you can think of this as inspiration for note-taking, inspiration for being involved, inspiration for following the story. But we're not rewarding inspiration after someone says something. There might be a player that doesn't speak through the entire thing, and that is okay. We're not always rewarding the note-taker for their particular method of play, and we're not punishing someone who has a bit of trouble remembering what's going on. Part of why we're doing this recap is to get everyone on the same page. What this is for is to get us into the quest, everyone on the same page, with momentum. If you stop going up a hill on a bicycle and then try to get going again, it's hard to get going. You need momentum. And so by having everyone focus on this one small aspect of story, that gets momentum going. Rewarding inspiration then gets people excited and carrying forward that momentum to get into the rest of what this quest is. People are chomping at the bit. People are now excited to play because they just had that little dopamine hit. Yes, everyone just got inspiration. We're powerful. We have more resources. It's great. And then as players start to do things, they have inspiration to spend. That way they're less likely to get to that first ability check and fail. Or, okay, this is the mission. We're going to go fight the monster. And then everyone gets stunned by a psionic attack. Like, this gives motivation to get going. It gives momentum. And it keeps everyone focused on this element of story. So this isn't something that I do every session. This is something I do at particular points of the story, whether it's after a cliffhanger session last week, or if it's like, okay, guys, we're about to breach and enter this vault. What's going on? Why are we doing it? And we make sure that everyone is flowing together nicely. The final method that I use to reward inspiration, I'm actually currently using in my Lost Lore campaign. This method is Class Combat Inspiration. Class Combat Inspiration gives every character class a method for granting themselves inspiration in combat. If you happen to be multi-classed, you're just going to use whatever class you have the most amount of levels in, or your more prominent class if you happen to be tied in those multi-class levels. Some of these class inspirations are designed around having your class shine doing the thing your class is supposed to do. It allows you to take the spotlight for what your archetype is supposed to do in the combat and allow for you to shine while doing that thing. Alternatively, some of these are actually the opposite. Some classes can be considered a solved case when it comes to game design. A paladin that is not attacking, looking for crits, and smiting when they can is giving up some of the possible power that they have. Every spell slot you don't use for a spell is another spell slot you can use for a smite. And I've commonly heard them referred to as smite slots. Some of these mechanics are based around taking those optimal behaviors and giving you a reason not to always play optimally supreme, to give back a little bit if something happens that typically feels bad mechanically for your class. This allows for that to be smoothed over and for you to be more free to play the way you want to play, as opposed to feeling like you're supposed to play the way that is optimally sound. Now, there's a lot of information here that I'm going to go through pretty quickly, so we're going to be leaning pretty heavily on these slides for this part of the video, but also a reminder that all of this is in a document that you can download for free on my Patreon link below. Barbarians gain inspiration when their rage ends during an active combat. It sucks when you waste a rage on a combat that didn't need one. Also, while raging, it can be hard to choose to do something that you know will let your rage drop. Barbarian Combat Inspiration is meant to make those choices feel less punishing. Bards gain inspiration when they grant their final bardic inspiration in combat. At lower levels, bardic inspiration has limited uses and it can be difficult to know when to use them. At higher levels, with more uses that come back on a short rest, resources can go unspent. Bard Combat Inspiration encourages all bardics to be given throughout your career. Clerics gain inspiration when they use a total of 3 domain spells or channel divinity options in the same combat. It is easy for clerics to fall back into the healing role. Cleric Combat Inspiration encourages characters to do all of the fun things their chosen domain is meant to do, and it gives a small reward for those players that accept the medic role with the healing domain. Druids gain inspiration when a wild shape feature that they started this combat ends during the same combat. Druid wild shapes have a long duration that can feel bad to let end early. Also, there is power creep of later druid circles having extremely strong class features compared to the original player handbook options. It just isn't worth it for any druid that isn't the Circle of the Moon to transform into a beast during combat, even if a change in size or movement speed could be beneficial. Druid combat inspiration benefits characters wanting to make creative choices over the most optimal ones. Fighters gain inspiration when they use both Action Surge and Second Wind in the same combat. Short rests are not always guaranteed after a combat. Fighter combat inspiration incentivizes characters to have their hero moment to shine in the spotlight now without worrying about what comes after. Notably, this was designed for 2014 rules before fighters got a ton of second wins, so you might need to adjust if you're playing with 2024 rules. Monks gain inspiration when they use their final key point in combat. More recent monk features allow for ki to be spent outside of combat to heal and do other utility things. This can cause hesitation on whether ki should be used in combat for the default uses. Additionally, spending ki on failed attacks or to dodge an enemy that doesn't actually choose to attack you can feel bad. Monk combat inspiration rewards a lack of hesitation and softens the blow for poor outcomes. Paladins gain inspiration when they use their action in combat to cast a spell. Smites are the optimal strategy for a paladin's spell slots. The most common actual spells for paladins tend to use bonus actions so they still have the opportunity to attack, and then possibly smite on the same turn anyways. Paladin combat inspiration gives the player permission to use their action to cast a spell rather than attempt a smite attack. Rangers gain inspiration when a concentration spell they have cast in this combat comes to an end. The Ranger has limited spell slots, and all of their core spells seem to be concentration. Needing to drop concentration and spend a new spell slot when the combat changes feels awful. Ranger combat inspiration is designed to make those times that you have to strategically drop Hunter's Mark for another spell not feel as negative. Rogues gain inspiration when their attack action hits but does not deal sneak attack damage. Sneak attack is an assumed part of a rogue's turn by the designers. If you find yourself in a situation where you can't get sneak attack, it feels like attacking is a waste. Rogue combat inspiration gives the rogue permission to attack even if it isn't optimal. Sorcerers gain inspiration when they use 1/3 of their total sorcery points, rounded up, in the same combat. Sorcery points are a long rest limited resource that can be hard to spend early in the adventuring day. Sorcerer combat inspiration rewards characters who use their sorcery points when they feel the situation is fitting, regardless of the adventuring day's progress. Warlocks gain inspiration when they use all of their pack slots in the same combat. The short-term limitation on Warlock pack slots can make any bad die roll feel like casting one of their spells was a bad idea. Warlock combat inspiration rewards the players for going all in on their magic. Wizards gain inspiration when they use a total value of spell slots equaling their level in the same combat. Wizards are meant to be the most adaptable of spellcasters. Wizard combat inspiration incentivizes using various tools in combat and rewarding resource use. However, it requires more that can be gained back on an arcane recovery to require permanent resource commitment. This actually isn't the wizard combat inspiration currently being used in my Lost Floor campaign. Combat inspiration was developed when the PCs were in their second tier of play. What is being used for wizards in that campaign is my generic full caster option. Full casters can gain inspiration when they use 3 different levels of spell slots in the same combat. This option rewards full casters for using various levels of power rather than going Nova or trying to skate by with the bare minimum. However, its very design is locked behind needing a level 5 caster to even use it. That's why Wizard got updated for the full release. You can see a little bit of the design still around in the Cleric though. We also have a generic option for martial characters. When a martial character enters initiative, they record their current HP. If they drop beneath 1/2 that value during the combat, they gain inspiration. Martial combatants are meant to stand between the enemies and the casters. Rather than setting it at a base number of HP loss, this one is relative to the start of the combat to encourage heroics, even if you're already roughed up at the beginning of the fight. You can also design combat inspirations custom to each character. I won't go through all of the details on screen, but you can develop combat inspirations that mesh with other homebrew at your table to incentivize any mode of play you want, whether it is rewarding a character for doing something in particular or allowing deeper choices to not be punished. So yeah, those are some of the methods that I have used and still use to reward inspiration to my players in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Thank you for watching the video, and thank you to the patrons on Patreon that make works like these possible. Reminder that you can jump down into the description to get a link to a free download for this video based off of the Patreon. And yeah, I'm a professional game master, so if you're looking for a game for yourself, your mother, your brother, your sister, your daughter, your dog, I'm for hire. If you're looking for a game, I've got plenty of them posted on the website. Join the Discord below to stay in touch with everything going on for Milestone Play. And have a lovely